Well, hello, hello. What if I could create a way for you to have a mentor, a teacher, someone who is always on call to help you out when you have a question and to make sure that you have all the inspiration and the motivation that you need and to have all of the accountability that you need so that you're able to learn and remember anything that you want and achieve any goal and do it all as quickly as you would like without ever having to worry that you would be left alone or abandoned or in any way subject to failure. What if that was all possible? What would that look like? And what would you do with it? Would you show up? Would you actually use this opportunity if it was possible? Because imagine if you wanted to improve your memory and you know that you need to learn the habits and the goals of showing up. And speaking of showing up, thank you for those of you who are on the call now. Let me know where you are in the world. Thanks for your thumbs up and so forth. There's been an interesting new revelation that likes don't mean anything on Facebook, but you know what? They do help show that you're engaged. So I really appreciate you letting me know that you're here by putting in some sort of comment that you're okay, you're in the world. Alvaro says, watching you from Spain. Thanks for letting me know, Alvaro. I really, really appreciate that. And thank you all for your appearance here and your engagement. And listen, it is becoming increasingly possible and sooner than we think. Benugo Palan, I hope I pronounced that right, watching from India. Thank you for being here. India is such an interesting place to me. I've never been, but I hope to visit. But you know, there's possibilities for tracking the engagement of people and how they're learning, the speed at which they're learning, the learning styles. And so, Vudisa from India, I wonder if Chendu from Vizag is going to be here. Johnson says, thank you for the tips. Well, thank you for being here, Johnson, and thank you for letting me know that you're here. Really, really appreciate it. So, you know, and the thing about being able to read how people are engaging with the technology helps us understand the learning styles that people have and then even segment what kinds of styles they have and as quickly as possible reach you where you learn best. And so one of the things that I'm very excited about is that I've just released a new podcast episode with Edan Curtis from a company called MyQuest, and I was able to spend quite a bit of time at the MyQuest headquarters in Tel Aviv, Israel, and talk with them about these educational challenges and what a software might look like in order to help people, in my case particularly, to help people learn the habits of genuine, ongoing, long-lasting memory improvement, because it is very much like going to the gym. If you want to, build your muscles, well, you learn certain movements and then you show up and you practice those movements. And it's really, really exciting what can happen to your body if you just show up and do those movements. You do them with some conscious awareness of what you're doing while you're going through the moves, and you follow a plan. And so the question really is, how do you excite people and interest people in following that plan and reinstating, reasserting, re-educating based on the needs of that person, that learner? How do you do that? And how do you do it with technology, right? How do you do it with an app? So this is a very, very interesting moment where I have the opportunity to create such an app in the memory improvement world that would coach you. And so I've released this interview with Edan, and there'll be a link below this to the specific one if you're watching this later on the website, because I do podcasts regularly, and it will eventually disappear in the list from the first page. But right now it's at the very top page. And if you go to magneticmemorymethod.com right now, if you're live on the call or later, you have the opportunity, well, not for very long though, you have the opportunity to actually shape the creation of the Magnetic Memory Method app. So your input would be very, very useful and helpful, and there's a survey there for you to go to. And you can also just directly go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT-app to fill that out, and the opportunity to participate and have your imprint on the creation of a Magnetic Memory Method app that will be in the form of a quest that will be about teaching you the skills, but also coaching you so that you use them and seeing how that can work for you. That can be shaped by you. You can influence it. So that's really exciting, and I want to encourage you to go to magneticmemorymethod.com, look at that interview with Edan Curtis, and listen to it, because he's got some incredible ideas about what learning in the 21st century is all about right now, how it's going to be shaped in the future, and what he's doing to open up possibilities for you. So Vidissa asks, how fast can we develop our memory? Well, how fast would you like to develop your memory? That's probably a great question to answer. If I can throw one back at you, really, how fast would you like to improve your memory, and what are you using your memory for, and what kinds of results do you want to achieve? Johnson, watching you from the Philippines, I'm practicing Korean. Isn't it a big possible... Let me see here. I'm going to click this button here so I can see your message. Isn't it a big possible that I can be able to memorize their language easily and fast? It is very, very possible to be very fast at this. And it has a lot to do with answering the question, how fast do you want it to be? And when you have a good idea in mind of what you want to achieve, then you can set daily goals. And those goals can be within the parameters of milestones that you set in advance. And so this is what is so exciting about doing a memory training coaching MyQuest quest is, what is it that you need help with? And that's why this survey that you can complete is going to help me guide the creation of it so that it is the one that will serve the most people where they're at, what their interests are in. And I'd really love your feedback on that. So again, you can go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT-app, or you can just go to magneticmemorymethod.com right now and download the interview with Edan Curtis. And there's a link there for the survey as well. And I'd really appreciate all the feedback that I can get, because when it comes to something like Korean, there's just tried and true ways that you can show up to learning the language by setting milestones and then daily or near daily patterns, rituals, learning behaviors that will get you there. You just need to show up for them. And so it's very, very easy. Now, Vidissa says, I told you that I'm a chess player and I've sent you the link, but I want to listen from you how to memorize dozens of main lines and variations. Well, first of all, the real thing to think about is, what is a chessboard, right? And how can you deal with it spatially? So that's the first thing. And we know that chessboards have been symbolically translated into quadrants, and they have been given signatures. Each quadrant has a signature, and so if you can memorize those signatures, then you can begin to think about how you would memorize them, and then you might need to show up and rehearse that until it gets into long-term memory, and then you can build from there again and again and again until you accomplish your goal of memorizing whatever it is that you want. Some people, when they work on chess memory, they work just on the end games, but the end game memory memorization, as opposed to openings, right, is all premised upon a memorization of other elements, such as the symbolic representation of the space on the board. And a lot of that symbolic representation is linked to the identity of the pieces on the board and so forth. So again, this is why getting some feedback from you all would be very, very interesting. Now, it's very unlikely that I would create an app just for memorizing chess. I think that we've got to go a bit wider than that. The memorization of music would be a similar thing, because it's, from my perspective as a bass player, and I think you can see my bass back there. There it is. Beautiful bass. It would be that I would want to go from what I've done in order to serve people the best. So, the amount of people who are going to hop on how to memorize the bass fretboard would be rather limited. So I want to work on a much larger spectrum for people. And so again, at magneticmemorymethod.com now is this new interview, the opportunity to complete that survey. Let me know what it is that you want to learn, and how that an app can help you, and you can be influential on the creation of it if you so choose. And I'd really love for you to be introduced to MyQuest and Edan Curtis and his work, because it's a fascinating quest that he's been on, and you'll learn a lot just from a person who has done so much in software, and thinking about the relationship between software and education. So your support on that is greatly appreciated. And again, that interview is live now at magneticmemorymethod.com. If you just want to fill out the survey, that's great. magneticmemorymethod.com/YT-app. If you just tell me the time you realize memory matters most, and then your journey to mastery briefly. Okay, well, if you haven't heard the story before, here's what happened. And I'm really glad that you asked that, because it gives me the opportunity to share it again. It's really was a dark time in my life. I was in Toronto. It was a very dark winter. I had, a few years before entering grad school, a situation with being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and then I was put on lithium and tried a number of antidepressants to mix with the lithium and so forth. And there was a crisis during this one winter. It was probably the coldest winter I ever experienced. I recall the snow being so high that they thought the military would have to come in to clear the streets. And at that time, I lived in East York, which is a wonderful part of Toronto, and I used to walk across the Danforth Viaduct, which is a very, very tall bridge. And at that time, they hadn't built the Luminous Veil. And the Luminous Veil is basically a suicide prevention device. And if you look it up on Wikipedia, it's a wild-looking creature. But it wasn't there at the time. And I went into this depression. I had just entered grad school. I was in grad school for about 4 months, and I was just struggling with all the books that needed to be read, and the deadlines of these field examinations coming up, where you have to read so many books, you have to read so many articles, and you have 2 field exams, at least in my university. You have second language requirement to demonstrate your abilities with that. You have a dissertation that you have to write, and then you have to defend the dissertation. Manise says, hey, Manise, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, but I'm so glad that you're here. And let me know where in the world you're from and how you're feeling about your memory today, and what you think about a Magnetic Memory Method app, how that would help you. And go to magneticmemorymethod.com. Oh, Manasee's from India. Well, I've got something for you right now at magneticmemorymethod.com, a new podcast interview, and there's a survey there that I'd love for you to complete to help me in the creation of a Magnetic Memory Method app. That would be delightful if you'd help out with that. Now, Manasee says, magnetic memory app would be a blessing. Well, thank you for saying that, and do help add some data to the pool by completing that survey. Again, it's at magneticmemorymethod.com, where the new podcast with Edan Curtis has been released. It's called MyQuest for improving, or MyQuest for your memory improvement with Edan Curtis. So hopefully I memorized that correctly, that episode title. But back to my story here, story time around the Magnetic Memory Method camp. Manasee says, I watched the videos and they are brilliant. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. Applause is important sometimes, so never fear that. But it's also not necessary. What's really necessary is applying the knowledge in the videos and learning. Johnson says, my exam is about to come up this July, but as of now I have a bit of vocabulary memorized. These messages fade so fast. Can you give tips or ideas even though I'm taking medicines to enchant it? Do you mean you're taking medicine to enhance your memory? Let's give me some more specific questions, and that will help guide it. But back to our campfire here in the Magnetic Memory Method headquarters. I was really stressed out about this, and I was going to the library with the deep, deep snow and the cold, and really suffering. And I remember going to the the psychiatrist, and taking a new antidepressant, and I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't read. We're talking about the most obscure French philosophy. We're talking about people throwing ancient Greek terminology at you all the time, and I really, needed to master this stuff. I needed to be able to sit in those exams and not be stressed out and answer questions directly, succinctly, names of authors, names of concepts, books, and so forth. And so I was getting stressed out and really in an unhappy space because of this. And so, yeah, it was kind of a situation where I thought, I can't concentrate, I can't read, I'm going to need to essentially drop out of school, or I'm going to need to jump off this bridge one of these days when I walk across it. And it was just in the air at the time, there were magicians, street magicians. It was coming out, and in Toronto, of course, in this winter, you wouldn't see street magicians. But when you could get to York University, there is a wonderful area leading up to the bookstore that has some restaurants, and there were magicians doing street magic in this sort of little shopping mall at York University. And I saw these people doing tricks, and it reminded me of when I was a kid, because I did tricks. They have show and tell and so forth. And in grade 2, I remember what a great memory palace that whole elementary school is, but especially in my grade 2 classroom, I did magic for my entire class. And so I was always deeply interested in magic, and I knew some tricks, but I hadn't done any for many, many years. And I thought, okay, I don't have to drop out of school right now, but another thing that was happening too is that like student loans were coming due, and I wasn't going to be eligible for any more, and weird letters were coming about how all these payments were going to be due, and I was just like super stressed out. But I saw this magic, and I thought, I remember magic tricks, and I was pretty good at them, and I thought, I'll just learn magic and I'll become a street magician. That's what I thought. Instead of dealing with the problem of not being able to concentrate, not being able to remember anything that I was reading, that I needed to read with these crushing exams coming up and all the writing duties and so forth, I thought, I will just study magic. And the beauty of it is when I looked into it, is that there were a lot of video courses. And I couldn't read, and magic, there's a debate in magic about how that, it's better to learn magic tricks from books rather than from any other source, such as videos. And there are a lot of people who are very conservative and say that your mind can't even properly process the knowledge that you need to get into your hands, and misdirection or applied focused attention, as it's sometimes called. And then there's other people who say, no, of course you can learn from video. You don't even need words to learn. You just need to see the moves and imitate the moves. And of course there's truth to both, but at the end of the day, I was learning really well from video because I didn't have to read, and muscle memory seemed to be doing very, very well. But of course I had this longer history with magic from being a kid and knowing some, I'd say, better than your uncle's tricks even when I was a young kid. And so I got really into this. I remember a friend giving me as a present a whole bunch of magic videos, and I was able to use these magic videos to learn magic tricks. And one day, in this period of darkness, I found a video about memorizing a deck of cards, and I thought, oh wow, well, what a great thing. It's an illusion to memorize a deck of cards, or to appear as if you've memorized a deck of cards. But there was also a way to legitimately memorize a deck of cards, and I just thought, isn't that amazing if you could actually do this? Hold on here. Manassi says, I'm going for medical studies and I have a pre-medical exam. I need to memorize lots of information. Need your help. Please help me. Also, I love your voice. Magic is awesome. The story, 100%. Okay, well, I'll just keep with the story and let me know your specific questions. The problem with questions, and this is something that may be useful for you, is saying, please help me is great. I thank you for entrusting me with the option to provide help. But without you going to magneticmemorymethod.com, for example, and learning the techniques, then all I can really say is go to Magnetic Memory Method and learn the techniques and dive into, create memory palaces, start using them. And then you'll find that you'll have real help because you're taking action. So I learned from video when I learned memory and learned magic and came across these things, and I really create the opportunity for people to learn in those same ways. But if you like text, well, there's text there too. And if you like audio, well, there's coming up on 200 episodes of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, so you can learn from that as well. And now there's the opportunity to create an app for you. So if you go to magneticmemorymethod.com now and listen to that interview, there's the opportunity to complete that survey and be part of the process of creating an app for you if app learning is what you need, and it'll have a coaching element to it, or at least that's how it's envisioned now. If people say, hell no, we don't need coaching, then that won't be there. Menacey says, yes, thank you so much. In any case, to get back to our story here, the whole thing is that I was really skeptical, and a lot of people, they're very skeptical of memory techniques when they first encounter them, and no doubt it sounds magical, it sounds impossible, and but when you use the powers of your own skepticism, and there's a podcast on the Magnetic Memory Method about skepticism for increasing your chances of succeeding with memory techniques, you're able to actually learn the techniques. So it's incredible. If you're skeptical of them, do what I did and do what a lot of people do. Use your skepticism as the energy to test. Wenderson says, I want to learn English with Magnetic Memory Method. How long till I get there? It's as long as you want to decide it's going to take. You just show up, learn the techniques, and use them. Set yourself goals. There's a course that I've created called The Ultimate Language Learning Secret, and you'll have a great experience with setting goals for yourself using the principles in that course. But, if you set strategic goals and you decide what you want to achieve in what particular periods of time, then you just need to show up daily, complete certain activities that are known scientifically to help you learn languages in very short periods of time. You're going to get there, and you're going to amaze yourself, and it's going to create energy for yourself. And again, the whole point of this live presentation today is that there's an opportunity to get an app involved that will coach you a little bit more deeper level. So if you want to shape that journey, shape that adventure, shape that creation of the Magnetic Memory Method MyQuest app, then go to magneticmemorymethod.com, download that interview with Edan Curtis, or if you just want to go straight to the survey, magneticmemorymethod.com/YT-app. So that would be very, very useful in helping you. Steve from Sydney, Australia. Steve, thank you for being here. Great to have someone in the country where I'm broadcasting from. I really appreciate it. We've got some questions coming up. I'm going to scroll through them in a minute here, but the story is I learned how to memorize a deck of cards. I was totally astonished. I could not believe how easy it was, and I instantly saw exactly how this applied to memorizing all of the information from those really hard to read books. Now, I wasn't out of the hot water yet because I still couldn't concentrate and I still couldn't remember what I was reading, but I saw now how to use the power of association to remember anything and how to create a memory palace and so forth. And so what I did essentially is I made cards. I made cards because I could memorize a deck of cards, so I thought, well, why don't I put information onto cards, right? And then just treat information from books as if it was cards, because I didn't really need to. Russell Bowers here from Alaska. Russell, I mentioned you today on the podcast I just released. Manassi asks, is the app paid? It doesn't exist yet, but if you complete that survey, that's a way for you to influence that part of it. But I really realized that I didn't need to actually worry too much about the information on the pages, and I learned a lot about my learning style, my sensory mode, and so I started to read out loud, because then I found I could concentrate longer, because I really now wanted to get the information into my memory the way that I figured out that I could by memorizing a deck of cards. And so reading aloud, and I even experimented with creating my own audiobooks. In some cases I was able to find audiobooks of certain books or lectures by the people who had written the books, and this is still early days of being able to find everything on the internet. But it was really wild, and I just started treating the stuff that I needed to learn like memorizing a deck of cards, and I just got better and better and better at it. And here's the beautiful thing: the more success that I experienced in being able to recall what I was putting there, because there's a difference between going through the action of memorizing stuff and then being able to recall it, right? So the more I was getting victory with the recall, it created confidence, it created energy, and it created patterns that I could show up to and follow, and then experience more and more of the same. And so basically, to answer the question, that is how I became so passionate about this. And even though many years passed before I ever started teaching memory techniques to anybody else, and I wound up going on a great adventure learning German using the memory techniques as a guide, I just was always really thankful for them. And when I realized, how much other people, I just thought nobody else really had these problems. I mean, I knew that people had depression and so forth, but I didn't know that they faced similar dire situations where they were going to give up on a goal they had. I had a goal of completing a PhD. I almost gave it up, right? And when I realized that this simple story, because it's not easy to tell people, that you were depressed and you took medication for it, but when I realized that it actually helps people say, oh, there's an alternative here, and it's just as simple as learning memory techniques, learning how my brain works anyway and optimizing it, and that I can overcome any learning obstacles, then I'm happy to tell that story again and again and again to help as many people as possible. And if that can be in an app somehow and you want to help shape that, then the opportunity is there. magneticmemorymethod.com/YT-app. And I would love to read your responses to that survey so that it can guide and shape and inform. So Wenderson asks, will the app run in Android or Apple or phone only, or Apple phone only? It's going to, as far as I understand it, it's going to be usable on any platform that you download it for. More information about that is on the interview if you're interested. Let's look back through some of the comments we've had here. Whoa, something has been, I'm not sure here. Okay, so Noob5 whoa, it's disappearing again. Sorry for the delay here. Noob5 Ibo says, I'm a medical student. I've been practicing the method of low-key for around 2 years. Could you briefly... why does this keep happening? Could you briefly explain how the magnetic memory method is different from the method of low-key? Oh, it's very different. Well, first of all, the method of low-key, what is this? Who uses the word low-key anymore, right? Who uses this? Obviously, it's a great word to learn and remember and so forth, but I don't use that word in my teaching. I use the word magnetic station, right? Because a memory palace is like a location that encases a number of stations that you are then able to recall in your mind with a minimum of cognitive load. All of this is covered in the free course on magneticmemorymethod.com, so please go and take that. Make sure that you've taken that. And I'm always kind of interested by some of the responses I get to that free course. Some people, they complete the homework assignment, and some people don't. And it's interesting. So there's ways for you to learn it. But the important thing is don't save it as data for later. Actually do the stuff, because that's how you're going to learn it. There's no conceptual understanding here that's going to lead to anything as profound as actual doing. So please do actually take these techniques up. Steve Ryan says, no need to answer now. However, do you have a list of books you would recommend? I have the Memory Palace of Matteo Ricci on order and the Luck Factor coming too. There are so many books that I would recommend, and I think that the Memory Palace of Matteo Ricci by Jonathan D. Spence is dispensable to pick up his word. The Luck Factor is not really about memory, but I think it will help improve your memory in many ways, roundabout ways. But again, the principle applies. Not data for later, but actually doing. So if you want to get the most out of the Luck Factor, do the stuff that is talked about in the Luck Factor. And since reading the Luck Factor, I have won all these tickets to the movies here in Brisbane. I can't believe it. But this is a stack of movie tickets for event. and there's two per movie, but there must be 8 movies altogether that were won, and actually I won the contest twice in a row, and so the luck factor, I don't know, it could be a coincidence, but it seems very, very, very much aligned, and if you practice what it says, you'll feel a shift. I'm quite confident. But in terms of memory, the books that really help are always the ones where you're actually going to apply the techniques. It's as simple as that. So I would strongly recommend reading any book on memory improvement, only to the extent that you're actually going to do what's suggested there. So let me give you one, for example, that has an exercise in it, and I'll let you find the exercise in the book if you choose to read it, that I highly recommend, and it's 2 Weeks to a Younger Brain by Gary Small. There's just a simple memory exercise. It falls under the rubric of what are called passive memory exercises. That's an idea for another app that I have in the future. I've actually already designed it, but getting the team together to make it happen is a bit of a challenge, but that's going to appear as soon as possible. But passive memory exercise is very, very powerful, and it's very interesting. And the app does not involve the exercise in Gary Small's 2 Weeks to a Younger Brain, but please read that book. Please support his work. You can find my interview with him on magneticmemorymethod.com. Just search in Google magneticmemorymethod.com and Gary Small. The interview is very, very powerful, and you'll learn a lot about how to think about your brain, because a lot of people use the metaphor of computer with their brain, but that's not right, and he has a much more powerful and interesting metaphor that I think you'll find useful. So there's one suggestion for you, and there are suggestions all across the Magnetic Memory Method site about books and so forth. Wenderson says, how much? Again, the opportunity is to fill out the survey, and you can help dictate how much it costs by your feedback. So somehow, I'm sorry, I was pressing these buttons, and a message from Ocelot1962 got deleted. If you can post your message again, Ocelot, if you're still here, that would be great. I hope Noob 5i Boy that answered your question there. And I'm going back here, seeing if we have any more questions. Manassi, if you're still here, I asked for more clarification on your question, and I'd really appreciate some more feedback on that. And if there are no other questions, then really I want to just thank you all for being here. Oh, I'm sorry. Somehow these buttons that I'm pressing are deleting messages, and I do not know why. The refinement of the YouTube Live technology is certainly an ongoing process, but let me know if you like these lives. Always, your engagement is useful in determining what decisions are made, which is again the purpose of this live. So, this has been Anthony Metivier from Magnetic Memory Method headquarters here in Brisbane, Australia. I really appreciate you all being here, and please help out with the app creation. Valentina says, thanks for the chat. Have a good day. Good night. Valentina, thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me know you were here. And go to magneticmemorymethod.com now to download the new discussion with the Dan Curtis from MyQuest. You're really going to love it. It's going to open your perspectives about what's possible. Russell says, what podcast did you mention me in, and should I listen to it for edification purposes? Russell, I mentioned you in today's podcast, and I mentioned your wonderful report on the YouTube channel here of what you've been doing, what you've been accomplishing. If I recall correctly, you were giving speeches at church, and I was really impressed by that, and I wanted to acknowledge it, and so I did. And if you want to hear that, that's at the end of that interview. And so that is the most recent post on magneticmemorymethod.com, and there's a link there to the survey about helping me figure out what this app is that's going to be created. Look, I already know pretty much what it is that I would create without your feedback, but I want your feedback. I don't want to just create what I would create. I want to be guided by what it is that you think that you need, and the more detail that you can provide, the more you'll be rewarded by what it is that you want, most likely. I mean, crowdsourcing and all that sort of stuff has never really been my thing, but I want to give it a try. I want to see what will happen rather than going with what I think will work. And you know what? I can still do what I think will work if that's the way that the way things come down. So thank you again for being here. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your day. And if you're watching this later, Russell says thank you. Thank you for being here, Russell. If you're watching this as a replay, by all means, keep the interaction and the engagement coming with some comments. There'll be some links in the description below, and I really enjoy these conversations. Where's My Jet is here. Wow, thank you for being here, and thank you for letting me know you were here. Again, I really want to get as much feedback on this survey as possible, so go listen to that interview with Dan at magneticmarymethod.com. And if you're watching this later, that survey may or may not still be here. It's at magneticmarymethod.com/YT-app. But if it is for any reason gone, then that link will take you to somewhere else, and I'm quite confident that it will be well worth your time wherever it takes you. So thanks again to everyone, and until we speak again, as I always like to say, keep yourself magnetic, and I'll hit the finish button. Thank you again. Bye-bye.